What time is it?
It's time for more love.
Welcome to another show, and welcome to More Love. We have two fantastic guests with us today, and our topic, let me tell you, you don't want to miss. It is entitled Faithfulness and Fidelity. Our guests today are some powerhouses who's going to be joining Ingram and I in this wonderful conversation. And before we get into the meat and heart of this dialogue, we want our guests to tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do. So we're going to start out with our first guest, Heath Wiggins. Please tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, hi. Thank you for inviting me on to your show. I really appreciate it, and I'm really excited. So thank you, Atiya and Ingram. My name, as they said, is Heath Wiggins. I am a relationship consultant, like in the movie Hitch. And I do two things predominantly. Well, I do more than two things, but the things that I focus on really is I am as a relationship consultant, I teach singles and couples how to obtain and maintain a happy, loving, trusting relationship. But I also expanded my brand about 2 years ago, and I started working with Christian men to empower them to become the kind of man that a woman can trust, respect, and actually want to follow. And I do that through my publishings, which is the book that I wrote entitled His Leadership, Her Trust. It's a best-selling book on Amazon, and I'm happy about that. And then we also do speaking engagements as well as exclusive consulting, like I said, like in the movie Hitch. And that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. That's consuming my world as it is.
Wow, fantastic. And then we have Coach Ivy. Coach Ivy, tell our listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Well, thank you very much, and thanks so much for having me, Atiya and Ingram. It's a delight and a pleasure to be here, as well as to be here with Heath. And congratulations on your book, Heath. I am a coach that primarily I work with women, although I have worked with men, but I focus a lot on sort of the self-evolution, because I know that when a woman is fulfilled, she's confident, she's radiant, she's irresistible. And when one is grounded, you make better choices about dating and about being in a relationship. And I do work with couples as well to do the same thing, finding out who they are as individuals and then how they can come together to further their relationship. So that pretty much is the direction that I'm off in. I do a lot of group support with working with women to help them be confident and grounded in themselves so that they make really empowered choices when they're dating, that their yes is as equally powerful as their no, and they're confident in staying when it makes a difference and walking away when it doesn't serve them.
Wow.
Great. We've got two great guests for the show, and once again, welcome to you both. We are excited as much as you are to get stuck into meat, and let's get talking.
Well, hey, this is on Faithfulness and Fidelity. One of the things that I would really actually want to ask, unless you want to ask the first question.
No, dear, this is your favorite topic.
No, well, actually, what I want to know is, why is it to both of you, Heath and Coach Ivy, why is this an important conversation to have? And any one of you can jump in.
I'll jump in first. For me, I really speak a lot about dating and relationship integrity. And it really is about the commitment that people make to one another. It's what you're giving your word to. And so that's why it's important to me. If you're giving your word to be committed, then be committed. If you don't want to be committed, then don't give your word to that. And that's why it's really important to me. And I think that what has happened over time is we have had a lot of breakdown in male and female dynamics, where there is often a lack of understanding around sexual roles, and I don't mean necessarily in relationship. That's just in the world, and the United States, we have a lot of gender issues and gender differences, and those things are evolving as each day as we speak. It used to be the woman was the homemaker and the man made the money, and now that's very, very, very different. And I think that has lended itself to people being confused about the roles that they play in relationships and what they should and shouldn't be committing to, and which is why, for me, I advocate a lot of getting to know yourself, because when you have your truth, you can honor your word when it's around your truth. But a lot of us just agree to do things in relationships or to be someone in a relationship that is not aligned with who we truly are, just so we're not lonely, so we're not alone, so we're not single. And when that happens, over time, you just can't be that person because it's not who you really are. And then there's a lack of integrity, and then once the integrity is broken, that breaks the trust, and trust is very difficult to earn back once it's been broken. So for me, it really is about having dating or relationship integrity. What are you giving your word to? And, you honor that. And when you can't, you step up and say that you can't, rather than breaking a vow or commitment or your word to the other person. And ultimately, that's how human beings can be good to each other, loving of each other, supporting of each other, and it will break down the barriers between men and women ultimately. Because nobody's, not to say we won't be hurt, but it certainly won't be due to us making poor choices around breaking our word and not honoring our commitment. So that's, for me, why it's important.
Well said, I must say, Ivy. That was well said.
Very well said.
I agree with a lot of what you said. I guess for me, when I look at my marriage, and we just celebrated last weekend 18 years, and so I'm happy about that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And so what we experienced in the beginning of our marriage was a lot. It wasn't a lack of trust, but it was the absence of confidence in each other as a husband and wife. And and it's no shade against my wife or anything, but we were new, we were young, we were in our 20s, I was in my 20s, and so we were trying to figure out who we were as a person in conjunction with trying to figure out who we were as a couple. And just the absence of the known left us in a place of just unknown. And we were trying to build a family and learn about life and learn about who we were. And so what was a hallmark centerpiece of our relationship was the fact that I can rely on her and she can rely on me, and that our word was more important than our preferences. And what I mean is, we set up a sort of a standard in our family that we have the Wiggins household rules that apply to the Wiggins household to both of us. And then we had our own individual preferences. And sometimes when I wanted to have my way or she wanted to have her way, we would have to give way to each other's preferences based upon the standards of the Wiggins household. And that centerpiece right there allowed us to put a lot of trust and confidence in each other, that I know that she's not going to do something that's against my best interest, and she knew that I was not going to do something against her best interest. And so that's one of the things that, as we began to do a lot of coaching with clients at church and friends of ours, that's kind of how we started this whole business out. We saw that there was a lot of me-isms, a lot of I'm in it for me, I'm doing myself, I'm going to do what I want to do. And we noticed that there was a difference in the way that we approached it as opposed to the way other couples who were struggling with their relational stability approached it. We were very faithful to our word. We were very faithful to each other. We were faithful to the Wiggins household, more so than we were faithful to the things that we wanted to pursue and desired on our own. And so that key hallmark and that cornerstone was able to really set the foundation for us to build upon. And if you don't have that foundation and cornerstone, then your whole foundation is shaky from the get-go. And you're trying to build a big house of 30 years and a couple children on a shaky foundation of lack of trust or distrust and what we call self-preservation, when you feel like I have to protect myself from my spouse because I don't trust them to do what's in the best interest of myself or the family. And so that's why this is a key area, an issue for me.
Heath, you brought some very meaty points there. I want to go into the Wiggins household. And the first thing I want to ask you is, how do you maintain the strength of the Wiggins household against what happens outside the household? Now, you're not influenced by what media may say, what friends and family may say, what the common trend and fashion would be. How do you ensure that doesn't influence your household and stay strong to the principles that you believe in, or you and your wife believe in?
That's a powerful question.
That's a very good question, and I thought you were going to go someplace different with it, but when you said based upon the external influences, that created, in our family, that created a very big piece of the pie about what we had to surrender for the sake of the Wiggins household. Because I am intrinsically an extrovert. I didn't know that until after I got married. There's a lot of things you find out about yourself after marriage that you just don't know.
Married, that's true.
Right. Like, I did not know how selfish I was until my wife kept telling me, "You're selfish." I was like, "No, I'm not. You don't want to give as much as I do." So, but I'm a extrovert. I like people. I like being around people. I get energy being around people. My wife is an introvert. And so she gets energy by being alone, or not alone, but, having peace and solitude. And she can be home all day, all weekend, and feel so relaxed. And I'll feel stressed out because I feel like there's a whole bunch of things out there that I'm missing. I need to be a part of.
That sounds like me and Ingram, actually.
And so what I figured out was the external influences I was more interested in pursuing: business opportunities, social events, church activities, and so forth, and she was not. And it was a conflict in the beginning. We still clash with that a little bit 18 years later, but it was a serious conflict in the beginning. And the things that, in my friends that I had before I was married, my expectation for her was that she would just join us and hang out together. That was wrong with me. I didn't know it before that. But the things that we saw individually ourselves doing as a couple, meaning when I was single, I saw myself hanging out with my wife and my friends and doing things socially. And my wife saw the two of us sitting home alone watching a movie, in a VHS. This is before DVDs came out. VHS. So we both had these external expectations about what we would be doing socially, and we had to realize that the external was causing conflict internally, and that was unacceptable for me and for her. And so I had to make a concerted decision. And the way you asked the question, how was it? It was very deliberate. We had to make sure we were very deliberate in recognizing the external influences that were causing conflict internally and agreeing and pursuing what the Wiggins household wanted as opposed to what I wanted or what she wanted. So we came up with a compromise. 2 weekends out of the month, we would go out and hang out to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning with my friends. 2 weekends of the month, we would stay inside and sit up and watch TV and with popcorn and movies. And so that was kind of how we worked that thing out.
I have to be really, really honest with you here, Heath, and I'm probably going to tap into a lot of the fears of many single men or single women, those who don't want to commit. And some of the things you say there, like staying at home in with the wife, having popcorn, watching movies, and then wanting to go out and be out with your friends. There are many single people that think to themselves, I'm not going to get married because I don't want to get tied down by no man, and I don't want to get tied down by no woman. Therefore, I'll just date until I have my freedom. So therefore, we don't see people committing as much. I want to bring Ivy in with this. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's very true. I think, especially in the U.S., there are more singles now than ever before. And I think It's because men and women have more options. And with online dating, your options are almost infinite. Now you can date anybody anywhere on the planet and in multiple time zones. In fact, if you want to do that, I personally find that just takes a ridiculous amount of energy to do. But there are some people who are really into that. I think ultimately this is where it comes into really knowing yourself. People I know, men and women, that want a relationship really want a relationship. And they'll start off dating with that premise. And they are generally good about being in integrity with that a commitment to themselves and disclose it up front because it's what they want. They're looking for a relationship. People that don't, often sometimes that little bit of information is held back, but I would encourage them to say the same because there's a ton of people that want the same thing. There are people that want relationships and people that just want to date. Both are fine, but it's just a matter of knowing yourself well enough to know where you are on that continuum and being honest about where you are. And there's usually, you can find any number of takers for both. You can attract people that want a relationship and you'll attract people that want to date. The better you know yourself, the more you're going to be able to navigate that sort of playing field because you can be in integrity with what you're wanting in that particular moment and communicate that to whomever your date is at the moment. And when you're not aligned, you're just not aligned. And you just say, this isn't really what I want. Like I'm kind of at this point in my life and this isn't really what I want. And so it's been a blast, but no thanks. No harm, no foul, because you haven't broken any commitments or word. Where for this topic, where it gets off track is people that want one thing, or something, and then they enter into a relationship without having disclosed this sort of what I call the fine print. Like there's a social contract, and then there's the fine print of the contract, which isn't disclosed. And that's where we really get off track, because I have all these hidden expectations, to Heath's point, is this is how it's supposed to look, but I never told you that this is how it's supposed to look. And then I'm furious with you or upset with you that it doesn't look that way. Well, I never asked for it, and I never communicated. If we didn't talk about it, he or she is not a mind reader, so how are they supposed to know? So it's really important that you really get in touch with, this is what I want a commitment. And the commitment to me looks like whatever it looks like. And you share that. I mean, I share that with people when I'm dating. And they're either aligned going, yeah, I could see myself doing that, or like parts of it I can see myself, or like, no, I could never do that. And I go, right, not a fit. It's okay. It's totally okay.
That was
let me jump on the other end of that. I agree with what Ivy is saying. In my practice, what I've experienced, especially dealing with people in their 20s or even as late as their early 30s, is that they don't know what they want because what they've seen in their past experience, past relationships, seen their mother in previous relationships, their auntie, their sister, their brother, their cousin, whomever. What they've seen are bad relationships in multiple folds, and they don't want that. In their experiences alone, if they're single, they've probably had relationships that didn't turn out the way they wanted, and so there's a sort of a chasm in their understanding about what they really want, because one of the things that I maintain or believe is that you don't really know what kind of man or woman you are until the opportunity of the relationship presents itself to show you to be who you are. So, for example, if you are a person that said you will never cheat, you will never do this, I'm going to stay faithful to my wife forever, you don't know if you're not a cheater until you have an opportunity to cheat, and that opportunity is real easy, and you don't do it. That's when you prove to yourself that you are who you think that you are. And what a lot of young people experience is that they've had these expectations about who they want to be and who they think they are, like I did when I was younger and married. But it's not till you're in a relationship and the opportunity for you to prove that man or woman that you are presents itself that you determine that that's who you're going to be. And so when you have people that are living life and they're going through these life experiences, sometimes they find out that they are not the person that they thought they were. And that's confusing to them. From a human nature standpoint, they people talk about how I made the wrong decision. No, I knew I shouldn't have stayed in this. I shouldn't have stayed in this relationship as long as I should have, because the decisions that they are making are not in their own best interest, and they don't know that until afterwards. And that's why when people in their mid to late 30s, they realize all the mistakes, those tomfoolery mistakes that they made in their 20s. And so when people are dating, you take that person, that uninformed but yet learning person, and you put them in a relationship, and you have all those relationship dynamics that come forth. They may not know how they feel in a relationship with this person on this time of the this stage in their life. And so that I think is learning, because some of the things that they may be they may have an expectation that they want to just date and just be free to date whomever they want to, but then they may fall in love, and they didn't expect that. Or they may think that they want to be really single, but then they find another person that they're more interested in than the person that they're with, and they want to date other people. And those things are evolving. And so it's hard to put a solid pin in an emotion and say, I'm tethered to this emotion forever, and I'm going to stick with this emotion regardless of the changing circumstances, internally or externally, that affect one.
Wow, Heath, that's a very good point that you made. We would like to take a brief break, and when we come back, we'll pick up on this conversation.
Man is basically as faithful as his options. That's how faithful a man is, no more, no less. And you see all these fat Republican guys going, I would never do such a thing. This is a travesty. I'm like, nobody's trying to blow you. Ain't no 20-year-old girls trying to blow Orrin Hatch. Ain't nobody trying to give Newt Gingrich some.
Basic principles. No woman wakes up saying, God, I hope I don't get swept off.
All couples want to communicate effectively, but couples first need to learn better communication skills. Relationship consultant and best-selling author Heath Wiggins will teach you how to enjoy better communication with your mate. Go to hisleadershiphertrust.com for more information. And don't forget to add the www.
You're listening to More Love.
That was a really deep point that you were making, Heath, right before the break.
And the question that I would like to put on the table for us to discuss is, you mentioned earlier on about temptation. You didn't use the word temptation, but I'm using the word of temptation. So you don't really know what kind of person you are until you're tempted. So what places people in the position to be tempted? And then how can a person who has committed or says that I'm not going to cheat or I'm not going to go back on my word with the person that I said I'm committed to, how do you not fall into the trap of actually failing in your word?
Well, there's a biblical verse that I'm going to use to describe what temptation is, and it's or what one does when they're tempted. It's I can't remember the actual text of it, but it talks about you are only tempted by the desires that you have within you. So if you have a desire for attention and affection, and you're not getting that kind of attention and affection you expect to receive in a relationship, then you are tempted to seek or receive that desire and attention elsewhere. Now, what determines whether you do that or not is a whole myriad of factors. There's no one thing that I could point to. But I think your question is very grand in that you have to recognize that you do have a desire let me just use this as an example. You do have a desire for attention and affection. And so let's learn how to communicate that desire to your mate and see what options that is available for the two of you all to figure out how you can meet that attention and desire. But what people don't know is that they need to communicate that, one, and they don't know what to do when they're not receiving that level of attention and desire. And so that's when life presents itself, like, what kind of man are you going to be? Are you going to be the kind of dude that goes out and seeks it elsewhere because that's what you want? Or are you going to be the kind of dude that figures out, that denies your longings and figures out how to get what you want from the relationship you're with? And I mean, that's the big mystery of life. How do you present that? What I recommend is you hang around people that are doing what you want to do, and you hang around people that can give you wisdom and understanding about how to accomplish the relational goals that you want to accomplish. Like myself and Ivy, for that matter.
Yeah, right.
So if you hang around people that where you see how people solve problems, then that will give you at least a leg up on trying to on how to solve that problem without trying to figure it out yourself. Because a lot of us don't, especially men, we don't like to say we don't know, and we don't like to ask for help when we need it.
And I want to piggyback off of that too. And I agree with everything what you said, Heath. The only deeper dive I would take is the better you know yourself, these types of temptations can be avoided. If I know I am a high touch, high affection person, I'm already looking for that kind of guy. I'm already, and when I'm in a relationship that's not it, I'm really very much able to communicate. And I'm just using this as an example, although I am a high-touch, high-communication kind of person. Like, if I don't feel that need is being met, this is not going to be a relationship that would work for me. Like, I'm not going to be fulfilled. So you can have a couple of choices. One is to get, like, I really love this person, and they don't meet this need, but I can meet it for myself. I'm going to talk to girlfriends. I'm going to go out and lead groups. I'm going to do all these other things around it that have that need for communication or affection, maybe from my family, maybe from my daughter, in a very healthy way. So it's not putting a demand or an unmet expectation on my partner. The other thing is I can also ask for it from my partner. I can actually say that, what would really feel good to me is if we went out to dinner and we just made it about us two. How about if we, get a hotel and just spend time, no phones, no TV, no nothing. Like a weekend of that, or even a day, a 24-hour period, would sustain me for a long period of time. But if you're not in touch with your own needs, you're going to be blindsided by this. You're going to just feel the gap. The emotion that'll be is like, this relationship isn't doing it for me. You won't even know why. A lot of us don't even know why. You'll just feel like there's a missing and I don't know why. Right. And so then what happens is somebody comes along and then they start fulfilling it. They're talking more, or maybe they're affectionate more, or you just feel like this instant click hit it off. And it could be all they're really doing is listening in a way that your partner, they're not even sometimes doing much more than your partner. It's just that in that moment, they're giving you their undivided attention in a way that is meaningful to you, whatever that way is, right? Mm-hmm. And next thing you know, you're in a compromise. Yes, yeah. And then you're in a compromising
way
position.
That you understand or receive it.
Exactly. It doesn't look the same for everybody, but it'll be something meaningful. And the minute that happens, you're like, oh, this feels so good. And it's and that's the only prevalent emotion in that moment. And the next thing you know, you're tempted beyond what you're able to deal with because you're not consciously present to what the need is that's missing for you. When you know yourself, you can just kind of sit, meditate, talk to some girlfriends, hold counsel. To Heath's point, if you have good, supportive relationships around that, you can actually go to someone that's been along and say, what do you do? Like I'm not connecting to him or her. I don't know what to do. This is like a gap for me. And if I don't do something, I'm concerned. But something's got to be done because what's important to me is not to erode the commitment and the trust that I have with this person. But if you don't have that self-knowledge, that self-awareness, you're basically going through life sort of unconscious, and then you're in a constant state of reactivity rather than a state of awareness and being proactive, a place where you can actually protect and preserve your relationship. You're more just sort of reacting and responding to any stimulus that's out there, good or bad. So within your marriage and without your marriage, and outside of your marriage or relationship.
Right. And that's what I run into, those people who are, in my business, those people who are not conscious, who are not self-aware, because they have not analyzed their or assessed or done that internal scoping to figure out what they want. All they know is what they feel. I'm not happy. He's not doing it for me. And that's the mystery that they find themselves in. I received a Facebook direct message last night about somebody who's engaged, but they're secretly engaged because they want to because she doesn't want to tell anybody that they are engaged because she's scared of what people might think. What that says to me is that you're not secure in the things that are going on in your relationship, that publicly you think people are going to shun it. And that is scary for her, so she wants to do like secret premarital counseling in order to get to the point where she can feel confident and get rid of their issues. So she hasn't done that internal scoping. She hasn't. She just knows she doesn't feel right about telling other people, and she doesn't know why, or she doesn't know, how that's going to affect their marriage. She wants to get married, but there's a whole lot of other dynamics that exist there. And that internal scoping that Ivy spoke about, that's what's missing in a lot of couples that I see, or a lot of individuals, I should say, that I see. And they mask it with other self-medicating, behaviors and stuff.
Well, they often mask it with the result. So I'm married. So now everybody outside of me thinks my world is perfect. The marriage, the relationship is the sort of the forward-facing, beautiful, wrapped-up package bow that you have that's covering up the fact that I really don't know who I am, and I don't even know if this marriage is going to work. I have everything I, quote, wanted, but not really. Because if I really thought about it, what I want is a healthy relationship, not just to be married or have a man or have a woman, right?
Yeah, true.
I have a few points. I'm very interested in the fact you keep talking and keep going back to the point of it's all starting with you. It all starts with you and basically ends with you in terms of decision, self-discovery, being conscious. There was a statement you made. Did you say high touch, high communication, was it?
That was an example for people.
Yeah.
There's some people that are high touch, high communication, like that's who they are. There are some people that aren't.
So if a person's high touch and high communication is then matched with somebody who hasn't got as much of a high touch and high communication, or one doesn't balance out with the other, how does that work out? And how do they could love one another intensely, but one may want more affection than the other? How does that balance itself out? And Heath or Ivy can answer that.
Yeah, well, before she answers it, let me add to your question.
Right.
Let me add on top of that, where one person is more high touch, high whatever, and the other may not be as much, but also the type of touch may be what one may communicate as being. Ingram's over here making faces. But one may, have certain types of touch that they like, and the other one may feel uncomfortable with that touch.
Hey, what's going on over there? What's going on over there?
And I hate it.
Yeah, actually, I'm asking the question to validate my behavior.
No, for real. But no, seriously, that's a very good point, though, that Ingram's making. So go ahead.
I think that's very common, actually, especially the differences between men and women. Like, women want affection, and men often downplay that to sex. And that's not to say that they don't coexist or aren't the same, but it could be that they look very, very different for the man or for the woman, and vice versa. It could go either way. I think that's one of those conversational things where you really got to know yourself. You're like, I always call them powerful requests. And you make them from a place of, this is what I truly desire. And it's not wrong of you to say no or that that's not working for you, but let's be in the space of talking about it, because I want it to work for me and for you. Like, I want it to feel good to me and to you. If it doesn't, then we have to kind of come to an agreement of how we're going to navigate this, because I don't want to, like, intellectually know you love me. I also want to feel you love me. And if I don't feel you love me, the knowing is it makes a difference, but overall it's not going to be in a difference. Like, part of relationship part of the romance of relationship is the feeling of love, the feeling of being in love or being loved or loving someone. That's why people will say, 20 years, it was like being married to a friend. The romance, the feeling of love, like you have an intellectual knowledge of, I know I've been with this person for 20 years. They have high regard, like their language, they have high regard. They hold me in high esteem, but there's no magic. There's no there's no love. I'm not feeling loving, or all that's missing, and it's because they're for some people you have to put it in. You have to consciously choose to put it in, but you got to talk about that stuff. Like you got to say what would really make me feel good is I want to go away this weekend, or let's have 2 hours alone. Let's take a bubble bath. Like that to me feels good, like loving. And he may say, all right, how about I'm not a bubble bath kind of guy, but what if we did couples massage? Would that work? We could massage each other, or we could go pay for one. So it's a negotiation that feels good. Or it could be, what about if we just turn off our cell phones and went for a walk in the woods, no interruptions? Like that could work for people. It's not an all or nothing equation. It's this kind of fluid thing, because sometimes it could be dependent on what you have time for, what you have resources for, and what people like in general. Some people are touchy-feely, huggy, and other people are not. Like that's going to be tough for them. And you just have to navigate that with conversation, with practice, with trial and error, with being open to what it could look like, and that's open on both parts. Open to someone saying, this isn't how I usually operate, but I'm going to try because I care about you. And the other person that says, I really need this, and I get it. You're trying, and so it may not look exactly how I like it or want it, but I'm willing to be open that it could look very different. And when you have that open level of conversation and communication, you can likely figure it out. There's a place where it's like, okay, yeah, this works. This feels good. He's happy. I'm happy. It's working. And then if it doesn't work, then you have a different conversation where this isn't working for me. I really care about you, and I honestly don't know what to do. We can seek help from friends. We can go to counseling. You can call Heath or Ivy. You can listen to Ingram and Atiya's show, see if they have an expert on this week. We can listen to it together. We have options if we want to preserve the relationship. And then that also would bring up, do we both feel this is worth preserving? Do we both want to make the effort? Are we both equally committed? And for some people, they get to, maybe not.
Thank you so much for that, Ivy. Hey, I want to talk about the dynamics of maybe married life, or not even married life, relationships between man and woman. What do you do as a man or as a husband to your wife to let her know that you love her and you consistently love her and that you appreciate her in your life, and vice versa?
That's a good question. You're making me think on this one. So let me piggyback on Ivy's response and tie it to the answer to your question, Ingram.
Right.
So, like I said, me and my wife have been married 18 years. And so when we first got married, I did not know that I was touchy-feely. I didn't know that. And so I learned that I wasn't feeling like I wanted my wife to be, more touchy-feely with me, but I didn't know as a man, could you be more touchy-feely with me? You don't want to say that because you sound like a punk. So I was trying to figure out how I can express that, so what we found out was that the book of love languages. And so I said, hey, touch is my love language. So, go ahead and touch me and let me touch you and everything will be happy. But she was more of a words of affirmation kind of person. So it was important for me to affirm her and to be very encouraging to her. But that's not, I'm capable of doing it, but it wasn't my normal modus operandi. I would, to show that I loved you, I would just, smack you in your behind and then you move on. And that wasn't getting it for her. So one of the things that we did is we said, okay, Wiggins household rules. We have to come up with a way that we do it for the Wiggins household. So in order for me to feel like I was, getting what I needed, which is touch, whenever I would go over to my wife and feel the need to touch, she had to lift her hands in the air like she was her hands in the air like she was surrendering, and I would just grope her all up and down, and then move on. And she was like, okay. I mean, and she would literally just stand there like I'd walk over to her with this look in my eyes like, you know what time it is, right? And so she just dropped what she was doing, put her hands in the air, I'd get with my feel on, and then go back to doing what I was doing.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
So what that said to me was, okay, you love me enough to let me grope you without any kind of punishment or shade or side eye or like, God, now really not. Why? Because I especially like doing when she was cooking because she was vulnerable and couldn't move. So it let me feel like, okay, I can express my love. I can feel like you love me because you're allowing me to do this. And what I had to do was give her more words of I had to be conscious and think about things that I can encourage her with, or encourage her to do, or be loving, and that was something I had to learn how to do, to use words for encouragement and stuff like that. So to answer your question, Ingram, you have to be intentional on doing the things that your spouse really, really wants to be done. And it's going to mean that you're not going to like it because it's not something intrinsically that you do. You're not going to want to do it because it's not something intrinsically that you do. But in order for you to be mutually happy in the marriage and feel loved, and that Ivy talked about, and have that feeling, then you have to be willing to sacrifice your preferences, like I said earlier, and stand there with your hands up and let your husband grope on you. Or you have to be willing to sit there, to come up with ideas and come up with words and verbs and adjectives to say to your wife when she does something that is very, remedial, you think, but she gets excited about you saying something positive about it. I mean, it's really calculated and concentrated in that you're thinking through this thing. This is not the sexy part of marriage when you are trying to be, let me find a word that I can use that will be encouraging to my wife. But here's the thing. She feels encouraged, even though I feel calculating. And I feel encouraged that I'm able to grope my wife at on demand, even though she feels like this is doggone near molestation going on over here. But I'm happy because I get to do that. And so even though it's a sacrifice to her to be groped and it's a sacrifice to me to find words of encouragement, both of us feel happy. And what we found is that we respect the effort. We respect the fact that I respect the fact that she's letting me do it, and she respects the fact that I'm saying words and using words that are encouraging to her. And so that almost brings a calm to situations when we're not doing it to one another, or when I don't feel like I can do it. So that kind of in a roundabout way answers your question, but and addresses what Ivy was saying previously. But yeah, I'm happy about the groping thing. You should try it. I just recommend it highly.
That's awesome. I like grope on demand.
So the funny thing about it is my wife has started doing it now too. So she does it to me. So I got to stand there. So I see how she feels. I feel a little molested, but hey, it's what we do in the Wiggins household. What can I say?
I have to say, in all that you said, it must be just me being male, but I don't know. All I heard was grope your wife and put hands in the air. That's all I heard in all of that. And that's why when I heard that, I thought,
and that's what he's over here bothering me doing. That's a really good point, though, because, I know a lot of people on the outside looking at Ingram and my relationship, they think we have this, we have a lot of banter, and we're just real everywhere we go, really. And the interesting thing is, though, we're both touchy-feely, but Ingram doesn't think I'm touchy-feely because his timing of touchy-feely is always when I'm doing something very serious, and then he wants to bring this component of play in that just burns me up because it's like, first of all, I find my husband to be very sexy. I find him to be very attractive, and I'm very attracted to him physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And so it's easy for him to distract me if I'm not careful. And so what we find in our situation is that the timing of the touchy-feeliness, because he does exactly what you do, Heath, to your wife.
Mm-hmm. Good job, Ingram. Good job.
And he always does it when I'm trying to cook. So he will literally try to do it when I'm trying to cook. And
see, that's because you're stationary and you can't run. That's why.
No, see, what it is and Ivy, you may understand being a female if you do a lot of the cooking in your household, but we like time things. So we put this on, and then we know we got this much time. We can do this. And so when your husband comes into the space, and then he wants to grope and feel, that kind of gets your timing off of everything. So
exactly.
But I want to come in and say something in this point here. Appreciation. Every second, every minute, every moment in time, I see my wife, I'm reaching out and telling her, I love you, I care for you, I appreciate you. And it's not always about sex. In fact, most of the time, 95% of the time, it isn't about sex. It's just about reaching out, touching and saying, I'm there, I'm here, I'm here. And to me, that is, that they say actions speak louder than words. I could say 1,001 times, I love you, I love you, I love you, but to take that next step further forward by actually reaching out and saying, I'm here, I'm nearby, I'm here, I'm nearby, and constantly doing all the time is, I think it's an action which, if not, monitored, or, you can start thinking to yourself, hold on, does she actually appreciate what I'm doing here? And then when you have difficult moments in a relationship, because we all have them, you have difficult moments in a relationship, you say, oh, do you love me? Well, I'm thinking to myself, hold on. All those times I've been out there and I've been reaching out and, every day doing this all the time, and then you have a difficult moment and you have a little doubt, oh, I don't know if you love me. I mean, then I think to myself, well, what have I been doing? What have I been standing for? What has been my motto? What has been my constitution as a man or as a husband? So that's something I'd like to give to both Ivy and Heath.
So is your and just let me so I understand the question, is it about appreciation in general, or is it about what about the gap? So when you've set the tone for appreciation, and then there's a gap, like there's this hard time, and then all of a sudden there's a question about whether or not you appreciate her.
Absolutely, because I don't just single myself out there. I think there's many people around the world that have a situation where they dearly love their partner, want to be with their partner and stay with their partner, but they're giving out, and sometimes for whatever reason there's a miscommunication, there's a blockage, there's just something not allowing that hook, that bond to be formed.
Yeah, but I think, Ingram, what you said is really key. You said, and what Heath mentioned about the 5 love languages by Gary Chapman. Is that who that book is by?
Yes.
Because you may see in your service of showing the demonstration, but like as Heath said earlier on, for the man's wife, or if someone's going through this, maybe the female or the wife, maybe that may not be her primary love language. So while it may be yours and that's how you're communicating, her primary love language may actually be affirming words.
See, but I will say this. Women can be very, no disrespect to Ivy, women can be very,
I think you need to be saying that to your wife.
That preface is very dangerous.
I was about to say, I think I'm going to be okay. I don't know what's going to happen after this call is over, though.
Yeah, so. that preface is very dangerous. Whenever you have to preamble a statement with no disrespect, there's a hint of disrespect on its way.
I provide a deluxe meal. Every Saturday night, I put down, we have a nice deluxe meal, top of the range. I cook and lights and camera and everything all there, ready to go. And you loving that. And then when you start getting used to it, you start complaining about it. Oh, it's this, it's that. I said, okay, fine. Obviously, you don't want the deluxe meal no more, so I pull it out on a Saturday night, pull it off. Then a couple of months down the line, we get into an argument. So you don't even care for me no more? Every Saturday you used to come and give me a meal. Now you don't give me a meal anymore. Hold on a second. All that time I was giving you those meals beforehand, you didn't really appreciate. Now it's taken away from you, or now I've pulled myself away and given you what you want, the reaction that you want, which is the behavior pattern. I'm no longer doing that now because you complain about it. I'm now trying to meet the need. I do that, and you stop complaining about it. So you kind of damned if you do and damned if you don't. Can you explain that, Ivy?
But can you make sure they know that this is not your personal?
It sounds like it's personal to me. I don't know. There's a little passion behind that explanation. I'm just saying. Do we need to have a call after the call?
Oh, right. I was about to say, but he's not talking about Atiya. He's not talking about her. Right. He's not talking about her. He's talking about what may have happened in the past.
Exactly, of course.
I think so appreciation and affirmation is needed by all human beings. And, again, it's, I'd love to tell you there's a formula, but I always say, you tell them again, and then you tell them what you told them. Like, you just keep telling them, because people just need that. And I think it's very fluid and very different, and you just have to be attuned to your partner to know what that is. There's never going to be any end in sight. So if I actually like to cook, for me, it's an expression of my femininity. I enjoy it. That's not every woman's expression. I have friends that if you go to their house, there's no food in their kitchen. They absolutely never cook. That's not their feminine expression. Now, they may make an effort to do that if they have a man in their life that do it, or that prefers that, or how that might look to them is, I make dinner happen, I don't make dinner, right? So that's their effort. So, it's that kind of thing where it's like my partner appreciates a home cooked meal. How I deliver that is up to me. How often I deliver that is up to me. But when I know it's something that's important to my partner and I want this relationship, then I got to figure out, how important it is to him and how much am I willing to do it. That's a personal inquiry. If you're with somebody who's touchy-feely and they like constant affection and that feels more than you can give, you got to make a determination about that relationship, or you guys are set up for 30 years of this constant bickering around it's not enough, it's not enough, it's not enough. But if you value the relationship, then you're going to work with each other to figure out what does it look like and can it look different. It doesn't, sometimes that's the other thing, like not to be so attached that it looks like a home-cooked meal, that it could actually look like, she bought dinner from Boston Market and put it on real plates. I'm still sitting at the table. I'm still eating with you. It's, fairly home-cooked food, but it's the effort that matters. And I think that's what the important thing is. And then other things, when I know it's a partner or like a hot button for my partner, like this is really important to them, it's one of those things, if I care about the person, it's kind of a concession that you make. And I make the concession joyfully and I know what I'm signing up for. Like if I'm going to be in a relationship, I'm signing up for this because this is what's important to them, and this is how it's going to be. They're not going to change overnight. They're not going to wake up one day and not want it. And if they tell me they're not want it, it's likely they might not want it for a few weeks, but they're going to want it again because that's who they are. And I know that when I sign up. And if it's not something that I feel like I'm capable of giving or even want to give, sometimes there's a disconnect, then you got to be honest about that and you start talking about it. But to Heath's point earlier, the biggest thing, I love your story, by the way. I love the grope on demand. That is so awesome. But one of the big things that I coach women is if your partner does something, men too, if they do something and you like it, show your appreciation and acknowledge them because you'll get more of it. So if you are a words of affirmation and he affirms me, then I would give him affection immediately. So there's not a time gap between it. And then what you guys are both doing is conditioning one another to give and receive the kind of love and affection that makes you both feel good. And it doesn't matter who starts first, but the other one should reciprocate with what they know their partner likes. And then there's this constant feedback loop of appreciation, of affirmation, of affinity, and so then your well doesn't ever run dry. And eventually it'll go sort of on autopilot. Every time he touches you, you immediately give a word of affirmation. Every time you get a word of affirmation, you touch him. It'll just go on autopilot because that will be your, what I like to call, that's your us bubble. That's the couple's language, the couple speak that you now have with one another.
Heath, I see you want to respond to that point, but let's take a brief moment, and then when we come back, you can go ahead and pick up right there. Do you wonder why you keep dating the same guy? Do you wonder if you'll ever get over him? Has dating gotten pretty frustrating for you? Well, fret no more. You've come to the right place. Coach Ivy seeks to inspire women to live an empowered life that fulfills her purpose and satiates her soul. Coach Ivy takes a holistic approach in helping you to produce results in all areas of your life. So empower your life today. Contact One Life Coaching at 410-997-0272. Many people, both men and women, sometimes in the quiet of their minds sit and ponder over why they're having such a hard time finding a life mate. And while the answers to that question may be very complex in some cases and very simple in others, I'm sure that many of us can roll up our sleeves, our pants legs, or our shirts and point to all the war wounds that we have received as a result of opening our hearts to love and romance. Many can share countless stories on how Tyrone or Freddie has hurt them, or how Lucinda is a loon and just damn crazy and no woman is worthy to be trusted. The truth is, countless people hold on to the pain and they struggle to realize that their romance war is over and now it's time to heal from the trauma and begin living life again and experiencing love the way it was meant to be experienced. If you are finding it difficult to move on with your life after a painful love battle, tune in to More Love radio show where we discuss the issues of love and romance in the Black community. You're listening to More Love. Okay, we are back, and if you're just joining us, you are listening to More Love. And today we're discussing faithfulness and fidelity. And we have with us Coach Ivy Allen and Heath Wiggins. Okay, Heath, before the break, Ivy was talking about the give and take that happens in relationships and the exchange of affections. And you had wanted to make a point about what Ivy said. So please go ahead and pick up on that.
You know, it's interesting you say that because when you're talking, I was thinking about years like 13 through 15, when we had hit that autopilot stride. And we kind of were like, it was like everything we did was so mutually beneficial. It was the sacrifice that I was willing to make was willing and grand because I knew she was making sacrifices to make me happy and do the things that I want. And the appreciation to your question, Ingram, the appreciation that was felt was mutual. But then around year 15, there was a shift, and it wasn't that I was taking for granted, but that had gotten old. You almost like you're high off of the dopamine rush of the newness, but then that dopamine rush comes down, and now that's not as exciting anymore. Mm-hmm. And you start to feel, and there started to be feelings of unappreciation and taken for granted, and that again, and she's cooking that again, or he's doing that again, he's doing that move again, and so there was a lot of unappreciation. I won't say a lot. There was unappreciation abounding in our relationship, and what we tried to do, and what we teach couples to do, is you need to have a reset moment, and you need to just go away and reset the boundaries of your relationship. We went away. I think we went down to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and just spent time working on our relationship, talking about stuff. We had already been talking, and we're good at communicating by then. So we had what we call the Wiggins Household Summit, and we had 9 questions that were relationally based, and we talked about them. And that was a way that we can that set the forum up for us to express these areas of unappreciation we felt and other things, and we were able to create the environment for openness and transparency without the shade of punishment or frustration, or letting the how you talk about the conversation rule the what you talk about. And we were able to identify those areas where we needed to improve, and then make some pledges to ourselves individually and to one another to try to improve upon those areas. And it all came about because there was a new awakening. Like I said earlier, you really don't know how you're going to feel until the opportunity presents itself for you to feel that way, and you feel that way, but you don't know that you can't plan that. So that's exactly what we would recommend for couples that are struggling with a cycle. It's almost a rudimentary at this point. You hit the reset button. Go away. Have a nice little discussion about your marriage. Go online, find some couples questions, take some games. I recommend having that conversation in the bed naked, because it's really hard for you to have a conversation in the bed naked when y'all are hugged up together. It can happen, but it's harder to have a conversation in the bed naked and be all mad and upset with one another. So if you do that, that will give you the form, because like Ivy said, there's no cookie cutter approach. There's no equation that will fix the feelings of unappreciation and then how to address that. So the thing that we recommend is when they come up, have a process for how you talk about it, and that's the process that we use, and that's the process that we recommend.
I love that little intimacy bubble. It is very difficult. I've encouraged couples to do that. When you're naked, you're your most vulnerable, and it does wonderful to lend itself to, because you're feeling so vulnerable. You're quite sensitive to your partner's feelings around that, and you can be incredibly generous.
Right.
And other thing I want to acknowledge you for saying, Heath, which I really have a deep appreciation for, is you and your wife seem to have created a conversation where you can talk without shaming each other for what you feel, and that is a huge thing. And it comes up in dating, like, he wanted me to do that. Well, there's nothing wrong with what he wants. If you're a no, just be a no. But people will make each other feel bad, ashamed, or wrong for the desires of their heart, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just a no for you. That's all. And that comes up a lot. And I love that you and your wife have come up. And even married couples, when I've counseled some married couples, he thinks I'm ridiculous. They'll use words like this. He says I'm ridiculous, or she says that, I'm a pig, or, she, whatever. And they're just, they make each other wrong, and there's a lot of shame. So then you talk about unfulfilled and unmet needs. Not only are my needs not getting met, but my spouse actually holds me in a particular negative regard because I even have this as a desire.
Yeah.
And that you guys can have very frank conversations around that, and that's not a part of it, is really, like, absolutely stellar, because so many couples don't have that safe space to speak the desires of their heart.
Wow. This has been an amazing conversation, and we are at the end of this particular show. I love both of you all. You bring so much wealth and wisdom to the table, and this topic is really an important one. But before we close out, if you would just share some last points that you can share with our listeners in terms of faith and fidelity and how to strengthen their particular relationship, that the doors and the windows aren't open to infidelity or doesn't happen. What measures can they put in place to have a more faithful type of relationship? And either one of you who wants to start?
I'll go ahead and take that one. There's going to come a point in time in every relationship where the requirements of the relationship surpass one's capacity to fulfill it. And that's when you're in that place when what you are doing is not working and your mate is still unhappy, or what you have tried has failed and you're having to start all over again. That's when the challenge of who you really are as a man or woman, you're met with that. And it's during those times that you have to really, really know, like Ivy said previously, you have to know yourself, and you have to be willing to face the hard truth about who you are and about what kind of decisions that you're making that reflect that. And it is true that you do. It's hard out there in relationships, and opportunities present itself for one to be unfaithful or be the person that they never said they wanted to be. But there's a couple things that I would say. One, real quick, is you always need to be learning. You always need to be learning about yourself. You need to be learning about the world. You need to be learning about your mate. You need to be learning about how you all interact together. It's always a quest learning. When you get married, you don't settle down. That's when you actually ramp up, because you're having to learn areas and do things and experience things you've never experienced before. And even if you've been married before, you've never experienced it with this person. And so it's all new. So you have to be in a perpetual cycle of learning. And then secondly, you always have to be working on your communication skills, because it's through the vehicle of communication that you're able to share what it is you're feeling and thinking. And like Ivy said, people who shame each other for feeling a certain way, that comes because you don't really understand why they feel that way. If you understood why, then you would be a little bit more sensitive to why they felt that way, and you would be able to deal with that. But absent of that knowledge of why, you just shun and shame and make a person feel bad for. So those are the two things. Always be learning and always working on your communication, because those are the things that I talk about in my book, His Leadership, Her Trust, that really will help a couple deal with the issues of intimacy and fidelity and a myriad of other things.
And usually what I say is be vigilant in the knowing of oneself. Like, I mean, you know, and this may be hard for extroverts out there, but, you know, take as much time as you can to know yourself. The better you know yourself, you're going to make more grounded choices, and you'll be more comfortable with the choices you make, because they're coming from this inner wisdom, this place of knowing what would fulfill and what satisfies you. When you know yourself, you can honor yourself, you can love yourself. And the more you feel that self-love from you, the more your ability increases to expand and extend that love to someone else. You can actually be a space where they can say anything and there's nothing wrong with what they say, because you are absolutely comfortable and in integrity with yourself, wants, needs, and wishes, and you know how to meet those needs and wishes. So it's not any more of a demand on a partner. It's more of creating a partnership that is going to work for the two of you, because not only have you learned in the honoring of yourself, your own needs and wants and wishes, you've also, in that process, begin to learn how to honor other human beings. And when you can do that, your ability to love expands. There is no blame. There is no shame. There's only the love present for them. Whether your partnership is going to last a lifetime or a weekend, it won't matter. Both will be mutually fulfilling and beneficial, because you know how to honor yourself in the matter and to honor this other human being with whom you are sharing this wonderful moment.
Wow, that's amazing. That is fantastic. Ingram, was there any last comments that you wanted to make?
No, I'm really to say thank you to both Ivy and Heath. Their wisdom, knowledge, and understanding is fantastic. And again, congratulations to Heath on his marriage, 18 years, and still going strong. And to Ivy for her and for Ivy for her input in terms of knowing oneself, and the strength of knowing oneself is just so important.
So fantastic. Well, we are at the end of our show, and for those listening, if you would like to contact either Ivy or Heath, there is a button where you're listening that will have the contact information for both of our guests. If you wanted to contact either one of them, that information is there. We would like to actually thank Heath and Ivy again for joining us on the show, More Love. We would like to thank our sponsors, and we especially want to thank you, the listeners, for listening in. And so until next time, we're going to leave you with the words of Smokey Robinson.
Let it be soon. Don't hesitate. Make it now.
You have been listening to More Love with Ingram and Atiya. We invite you to join us Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on morelove.online.